This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations Adjudication will now come to order. Notice of the public hearing is disseminated to all local media outlets by electronic format on Friday, March the 23rd, with a second notice provided on Thursday, March the 29th. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. This afternoon, we have two bills on the agenda that I sponsored. Bill 260 is relative to increasing the tax on alcoholic beverages and to amend Section 266203 of Chapter 26 relative to increasing the tobacco tax and to repeal 16311 of Chapter 16 Title 3 Guam Code annotated relative to eliminating the requirement of voter referenda for a tax increase and to appropriate the sum of $9,300,000 from the Healthy Futures Fund to the Guam Memorial Hospital for its fiscal year 2018 operational expenses. Bill 261, again, was sponsored by myself, and it's an act to amend Section 24103 of Title I, Chapter 24, Title 11, and to amend Section 224250 of Article 14, Chapter 12, relative to creating the Guam Department of Education Building Maintenance Fund and increasing the real property tax on Guam and dedicating 75% of the additional funds to the Territorial Educational Facilities Fund and 25% to the general fund, and eliminating the requirement for the voter referenda on the tax increase. You'll notice that in both bills, though I know others have opposed it, I've introduced a provision to repeal the referenda section. I figured, inasmuch as I've tried to include it in all previous legislation and it's been removed, or we've been told by the Attorney General that it need not apply and that they would not be enforcing it, I thought we might as well just repeal it. I understand that there's opposition to it. In 260, I'm increasing the alcoholic beverage tax, the distilled and the malted. And all the money that's going to be generated from the tax increase will go to the Healthy Futures Fund, and from the Healthy Futures Fund will go to the GMH. The intent of both of these legislation was to address a commitment I had made when we were discussing the business privilege tax in February and when we passed the sales tax in March, that I wanted to find an alternative source to funding, to meeting the needs of GMH and DOE, and that if we don't find an alternate source, then it's either going to be that additional 1% sales tax or that additional 1% business privilege tax. I was hoping to reduce the sales tax to 1% or even less if we can find alternative sources. I've received many texts recommending, and in fact some testimony recommending, that we address the real property tax. So we did address the real property tax. We've only increased the percentage as it relates to the underlying real property. Only to the improvement on the property. It's not going to increase the tax on the underlying property. So on undeveloped land owned by families would not see an increase in their taxes, but property that has been developed and there's a structure or an improvement upon it, that structure or improvement will have an increased tax. Again, that will go to the Department of Education, since it will go into the TEFF, the Territorial Educational Fund. I've also wanted to segregate it and save it on the side for a maintenance fund for DOE. We received an IG report about 5 years ago stating that there was close to $100 million worth of improvements that are needed, or maintenance and improvements needed by GDOE, but we've never had any funds for it. I thought that by providing this increase in the property tax that we could fund that maintenance and repair need at GDOE. The increase in the alcoholic beverage and the increase in the tobacco tax would go to the Healthy Futures Fund. I realize that it's not the $30 million that GEMH has been asking for, but it will increase the Healthy Futures Fund for the remainder of this fiscal year if this thing is passed by about $3 million, and it'll increase it $9 million if it's a full year. And eventually, at some point, that would mean that the Healthy Futures Fund would be generating close to $40 million a year. And if we can get some amendatory language in a separate piece of legislation addressing the distribution of the Healthy Futures Fund, hopefully we'll find the $30 million that's been requested for GMH. But this is one step at a time, and we're looking for other sources for additional revenue and trying to address it so that it doesn't all come from the sales tax, that 75% increase of that 1%. So that was the intent of those two pieces of legislation. When we issue the notice for hearing, we also have a provision asking that anyone who wants special accommodations notify the office. We've been notified that we have a couple of students from the university that wish to testify and get to class before 2 o'clock. So the university students that wish to testify, if you'd please come forward and present your testimony.
Honorable Speaker B.J. Cruz, and Senators of the 34th Guam Legislature. Hafade, my name is Glory Cruz, and I am here today to express my strong support for Bill number 26034, which, if passed, would increase the taxes on tobacco products. Despite significant progress since the first Surgeon General's report issued over 50 years ago, tobacco use remains the single largest cause of preventable death. Nearly 500,000 Americans will die from smoking-related diseases this year. Most tobacco users say they want to quit, and about half try to quit each year, but only less than 10% succeed without help. Research has shown that increasing the tax on tobacco products provide a proven effective incentive to help adults quit and prevent youth from ever starting a deadly habit. As a third-year pre-medical student at the University of Guam, I want to be a part of a tobacco-free generation. Of the roughly 20 million college and university students in the United States, more than 1 million are projected to die prematurely from cigarette smoking, while approximately 90% of smokers start by age 18, fully 99% start by age 26, underscoring the importance of preventative measures for young adults. Hence, I urge you to support Bill 26034. Thank you.
Thank you. Are the rest of your students going to testify also? Or just you? Oh, okay. Any of the panel have any questions or comments? If not, I'll thank you state your name, please. Sorry.
Glory Cruz.
Or Glory Cruz. Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you very much for your testimony, and
Thank
let's
you.
get to class on time.
Yes.
Thank you very much. See, all four names from UOG then are not going to be testifying. The next one on the list is Kenleon Guerrero. Peter J. Cruz. Kathy Rivera Castro. I don't see Dr. David. Okay. Why don't we start with this? Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Kenleon Guerrero. I'm the spokesperson for Guam Citizens for Public Accountability, and I am testifying today in support of increasing the taxes on alcohol and tobacco products. There have been many studies conducted all around the world showing the price sensitivity between alcohol and tobacco consumption and reductions in sales and distribution as the price increases. And when you consider that alcohol and tobacco are significant causation factors in Guam's dramatically escalating non-communicable disease rates, I think anything that we can do to help slow down that increase is worth doing. And the fact that the majority of the people who are suffering from the various NCDs of cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, and the rest of the infamous 8 don't have medical insurance as a result of the way our economy is set up. And as a result, we taxpayers are paying the burden on that. And as the diabetes rates go up, we're seeing dramatic increases in the expenditures of public health for supplies, medications, and we're seeing the cost of supplies and medications going up as well. So anything we can do to slow that down is worth doing. Now, I'm obviously not in favor of the provision to repeal 16311, and the reason is Puerto Rico's economy collapsed when their politicians borrowed the future, the next 3 generations, for their live-for-today style of operations for their government. And now the politicians are taxing the hell out of the population that remains in an effort to recover from the collapse of their own making. As a result, we're seeing residents of Puerto Rico who can leave Puerto Rico at the rate of 100 a day. The ones leaving are the young, the skilled, and those that have careers and prospects. And what's left behind are people that don't have money and people who are retired. So it's increasing the burden on all the social service systems in Puerto Rico. If Puerto Ricans had the power to approve the various debt issues and tax increases, there's no way they would have borrowed $72 billion in the name of the people to be repaid by the people. But their politicians didn't have to deal with a 16311 like you do. And I honor and respect how hard you defended this, Mr. Speaker. And part of your defense of 16311 was what stalled a number of bond bills coming out of the end of last year and also caused significant delays in actions on the TRAN bill. So this is a provision that is worth keeping in our books. There's The Attorney General has issued an opinion, but that's all it is. It's an opinion. It hasn't been tested in the courts yet. There's an active case in the Superior Court of Guam right now on this very issue over the fuel tax. And I think that will be an excellent opportunity for us to take 16311 through the entire process and make sure that the people of Guam do not have to endure what the people of Puerto Rico have to do, or what the people of Puerto Rico are enduring today. So on behalf of the people, I thank you for your valiant defense of 16311, and I ask you to remove this provision from both bills until such time it has gone through the court process to verify. Until then, it is worth keeping on the books so that we, the people, have a check and balance system against unfettered borrowing and unfettered tax increases. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cruz and Ms. Castro, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. Honorable Speaker Cruz and esteemed senators of the day. My name is Peter Cruz. I'm co-lead for the Tobacco Control Action Team of the Non-Communicable Disease Consortium. Tobacco companies have relied on 4 major strategies to ensure their success. These strategies accumulate an annual profit of $35.1 billion worldwide. It is estimated tobacco profits in the United States for 2018 will be $13.8 billion. These strategies have continued to bring exorbitant profits. Though smoking rates have declined in recent years, tobacco companies continue to forward themselves in innovative products of nicotine delivery. The first of these strategies, and probably the most important for tobacco companies, is economics. Their main target are individuals of low income bracket. Unfortunately, studies have produced that those with low income are the highest consumers of tobacco products. Second, education levels have a tremendous impact on, once again, the amount of tobacco products consumed. Epidemiology profiles reveal that individuals with the highest level of education are less likely to use tobacco products. Epidemiology profiles also shows us that a person with the least education are among the highest consumers of tobacco products. Third, individuals of color are targeted consistently by major tobacco companies. This is one of the major reasons why the Pacific region has the highest prevalence rate in the country. Last and the most disturbing is the targeting of youth. The future exists of all tobacco companies lie in attracting youth to become addicted to their product. The addiction of nicotine during one's youth assures tobacco companies receive a lifelong customers. If the intervention and cessation efforts are not applied during youth, it will be a greater struggle to become tobacco-free when they reach adults. The passage of Bill 2634 will consistently affect the 4 of the above-mentioned focus points. Raising taxes will benefit lower-income individuals and families. Our island's history has proven that every time tobacco taxes have been increased, there has been a measurable decrease in tobacco use, particularly among the youth. Study shows us that health and economic benefits are at the greatest impact at this time. The rise of taxes gives our island a current and future source of revenue. The revenue created could possibly be channeled towards various education programs that could uplift lower income individuals. Revenue created will empower our island to predict our own future. The improvement of the lifestyle of our island will be affected positively by reducing tobacco use. The top 5 health issues on Guam still remain tobacco related, and we continue to lose 1 Guamanian a day due to the ill effects of tobacco use. As I stated earlier, a rise in tobacco taxes definitely impact the economics of our island, but most importantly, will help reduce the consumption among our youth. This strategy continues to be highly effective in tobacco control. It is so important during this time to focus efforts on education, prevention, and empowerment. It is clear that Bill 26034 will be both a health and economic win for our island.
Thank you very much. Ms. Castro.
Buenas and half a day, Speaker Cruz and honorable senators of the 34th Guam Legislature. For the record, my name is Kathy Rivera Castro. I'm a resident of the village of Mongwon, and I have come before you to seek your assistance in helping the numerous organizations and coalitions that I volunteer for to ensure that our Paradise Island is one that is healthy and a better place for all generations that come after us. It has been my mission to publicly voice my thoughts and opinions on issues that provides opportunity for our government and community to work collaboratively to improve the quality of life for our people. I come before you in full support of Bill 260-34 COR. Alcohol and tobacco taxes are excise taxes, or charges paid at the distribution level and often built into the retail prices. These taxes levied on these products, many of which are preventable. All NCDs, regardless of what they are, cost our community millions of dollars. Lowering the incidence of NCDs must come with a holistic approach, which includes the advancement of policies that will reduce behaviors that are linked with these NCDs. Taxation is an essential component of the comprehensive tobacco and alcohol control strategies. As alcohol and tobacco tax increase will save lives, provide funds for our treatment centers, and save local government health care costs related to treating diseases brought on by lifetime use of tobacco and alcohol. Numerous studies have shown that an increase in taxation on both alcohol and tobacco does lower the usage. So while we are providing the much needed financial revenue to our public hospital, we are concurrently providing a way of helping thousands of our residents avoid a lifetime of addiction to tobacco and alcohol products. I have attached several studies and articles, and I hope you will find them beneficial. But these are just a few examples of the numerous research and data that exists supporting increased taxes on both alcohol and tobacco to support public health. Attached, you will find a fact sheet titled, "Tobacco Tax Increase Benefits Lower Income Smokers and Families," produced by the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. An economic and health benefit of tobacco taxation article published by the World Health Organization. An article titled, "Stanford Study, Higher Tobacco Taxes Are Associated with Reduced Alcohol Consumption," published by Stanford Medicine. And finally, from the World Health Organization, a technical briefing titled, "Alcohol Control Intervention for Appendix 3 of the Global Action Plan for Non-Communicable Diseases." This briefing highlights 5 specific intervention strategies, beginning with increasing excise taxes on alcohol beverages. In addition to the public sector, businesses can also benefit from a healthier workforce, with lower absenteeism and fewer losses of skilled workers through early retirement due to illness or early death. Any decrease in fatalities or injuries related to drunk or impaired driving is a win for all. We have seen far too many incidents in these recent days. Of particular concern to me as a mother and a grandmother are the number of articles I read in our newspapers that are documented abuse against minors that often involve the suspect being drunk or committing crimes because they are inebriated. I urge you to please support the passage of this legislation. Tobacco and alcohol-related deaths are far too prevalent on our island. Pass this legislation for anyone and everyone that you know that have been negatively impacted by tobacco and alcohol abuse. In doing so, you will know that you have helped to stop so many cases of abuse in the future. And if that's not enough, I encourage you to think about all of our people who are currently unable to receive dire medical care that they need as a result of underfunding of our healthcare facilities. An excise tax on both these products will provide long-term public health benefits for Guam, and also provide an immediate source of revenue for our health facilities that are in such critical state. I applaud you and all your fellow colleagues in the legislature for your continued work to improve our quality of life for each of us. Thank you once again for allowing me this opportunity to voice my opinion and concerns to you on behalf of myself and my family. God's blessing to each of you. Sana Maasi and Bendishan.
Thank you very much, Ms. Castro. Dr. David, I called your name earlier, so I see that you're...
Thank you. Good afternoon, Speaker Cruz and honorable senators of the legislature. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you and present testimony. I am Dr. Annette David. I'm a physician and a public health professional. I've been working in tobacco control for over 2 decades now, which just tells you how old I am. As physicians and health professionals at our small clinic, Health Partners LLC, we actively advocated for Guam's Natasha Act, the Public Law 3080, Resolution Number 26734, Public Law 25104, and other public policies related to tobacco control. We are writing you once again in strong support of Bill Number 26034, a strong and scientifically sound bill to further raise tobacco taxes in Guam and increase the tax on alcoholic beverages and to earmark the revenues for the Healthy Futures Fund. Senators, the data is indisputable. Tobacco remains the biggest killer. It kills more people on Guam than any other risk factor for disease. And we continue to have the highest rate of tobacco consumption amongst all U.S. states and territories. According to the latest data from 2016, our adult rate is 50% higher than the U.S. rate, and our youth smoking rate is 70% higher than the U.S. rate. And smokeless tobacco use is double here in Guam for adults and 2.5 times higher for our youth in Guam as compared to youth in the U.S. We continue to pay the price in terms of lost lives, ill health, and the costs for chronic care for tobacco-related illnesses like cancer. And they add to our health burden immensely. Alcohol is another major risk factor for premature death and disability. Our binge drinking rate here in Guam remains higher than that in the U.S. The U.S. Surgeon General, the World Health Organization, and other credible scientific institutions have unequivocally called for tobacco tax increases as an effective way to quickly reduce public consumption while increasing government revenues, which could be channeled to prevention and health care. The World Bank, in fact, has demonstrated that every 10% increase in tobacco taxes results in a 3 to 4% decrease in tobacco consumption within the population. Raising taxes from global experience is one of the fastest and the most effective means to reduce smoking within a population, particularly amongst 2 of the most vulnerable groups in our community, the young and the poor. Thus, raising tobacco taxes can be viewed as a strategy to protect youth and the poor from tobacco while increasing revenues for healthcare. The global experience affirms that raising tobacco taxes does not lead to business closures. Instead, the World Bank has shown that raising tobacco taxes is an efficient way of raising government revenue while providing a health benefit to the population. And the same principles apply to raising taxes on alcoholic beverages, although the body of evidence is not yet as large. Earmarking the tax revenues to fund prevention and health care is a critical component, as this provides a sustainable source of local funding for health. We urge the legislature to appropriate Healthy Futures Fund monies to provide for non-communicable disease prevention and care, as well as tertiary care at the hospital, and to support the programs within the Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center and the Department of Public Health and Social Services that promote tobacco control and alcohol abuse prevention. Health Partners is a small clinic. We're a small business in the private sector. We take all proposed tax increases seriously, and we will be affected by the GRT increase. But as ethical business owners, we support the proposed tobacco and alcohol tax increase as a fair way, an equitable way to raise general revenues and to fund disease prevention and control. This is much more preferable than an across-the-board raise in GRT. We feel it is only just to obtain the revenue for NCD prevention and control from the industries that promote the major preventable diseases here in our island. Thus, passing Bill 26034, consistent with the recommendations of the U.S. Surgeon General, the World Bank, and the World Health Organization, is a win-win scenario for Guam. We laud you, Speaker, for your leadership and senators in building healthy public policies and affirm our strong support for this bill. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present before you.
Thank you very much. Any member of the panel, any senator wish to have any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, I guess, a general question for the panel. Bill 260 is intending to raise the alcohol taxes and the tobacco taxes. A lot of the testimony that we've just received were more prevalent towards the tobacco side. Earlier, we passed a law that was to create a tax stamp regime for the tobacco industry. In passing that law, we were hoping to tighten up the enforcement of the existing tobacco taxes prior to this increase. As the author of that law, I'm just concerned that if we were to increase these taxes and make it effective immediately, it would create a difficult environment in which to determine the impact of the tax stamps. And the reason why I feel that that is important is because if we are to find in the implementation of the tax stamps that there was some egregious underpayments of tobacco taxes over the years prior, we may actually be able to go back and collect on those underpayments to the tune of perhaps an exponential amount to what's being proposed in this bill. And so I wanted to ask this panel, the effective date of this bill for alcohol and tobacco is immediately upon enactment on Section 5. How does this panel feel if we were to create an effective date on at least the tobacco tax side that would be 1 year after the start of the fiscal year? Because the tax stamps are supposed to be effective October 1, and that would give us 1 year of data to be able to see how the enforcement resulted in additional collections, and that 1 year of data would then allow for the regulatory body to be able to go back and say to those underpayers, you owe us these back taxes for these prior years. And then after that, in that new fiscal year, then the tax increase can take effect, and we'll make sure that we don't have the numbers basically running into each other and creating a difficult time enforcing any prior taxes that are owed. So how does the panel feel about a later effective date for the tobacco taxes for that purpose?
From my perspective, I like the idea of the stamp tax. I like the idea of collecting the taxes up front. That way we ensure that those monies are being collected. The way I see it is all the cigarette taxes could be attached to the stamp so that if this tax goes into effect, it's just an incremental increase in the cigarette tobacco product tax, whereas the stamp tax is geared specifically towards packaged products, but it's not, as I understand it, not geared towards vape solutions or accessories. That part of the tax could kick in now, and the part that's applied to the packaged products such as cigarette, tobacco, and cigars and things like that, that could kick in with the stamp tax so that when they're importing the cigarettes, we're collecting the entire tax amount up front. The goal is to help increase the cost of tobacco products and alcohol products to drive down consumption. So I don't see any conflict between it. That's just my personal perspective on it, because as a former member of the NCD, I wholeheartedly support the mission, and I've seen the results of what a little bit of effort has been able to accomplish. But NCD is an unfunded organization. And with some of these monies from the Healthy Futures Fund, eventually the goal is that more of it will be directed towards some of the programs in the NCD, which would make the efforts of these very fine action teams even more effective. So I don't see any conflict at all. I don't see it having a negative impact on collecting the data at all. Just from, I mean, we're talking about the packaged products as opposed to solutions and everything else. So a package is a package is a package. The stamp tax, as I understood it, is based on the existing taxes. We're just collecting them up front, right? This would just be a higher level of collection up front. I don't see any problem with that.
Senator, I think that was a fundamental piece of legislation that was absolutely necessary to give teeth to any sort of tax increases. And I would have to agree with Ken that I don't really think that the timing of it would make much of a difference. The key is that you have that mechanism in place to ensure enforcement of the collection of taxes. In fact, I would even propose that you might want to consider a similar piece of legislation for alcohol products. One is on enforcement, one is on the enforcement side, and the other one is on the revenue generation side. And I would propose that, that there should not be any mixing of the data. In fact, what will happen is you've actually made it possible to more efficiently collect whatever higher taxes would be there. The experience in some of the other countries in the Asia-Pacific region that have similar legislation have shown that the tax stamp was fundamental truly to collections, and it didn't really matter when the timing was, as long as you had them happening at the same time, and you've made that possible.
I think for me, the concern is that if we raise the tax at the same time that we implement the stamp, we won't know if the revenue increase is as a result of improved enforcement or higher taxes. And so it'll be difficult for the regulatory body to be able to go back and say who was underpaying previously, because their numbers would be, the variables in their numbers for their filings would have two variables, and it'll be difficult to extricate which one was as a result of underpayment versus which one was a result of the increase in taxes. So and that's the only reason why I'm raising the question. But I do see the point in making it apply only to the cigarette side, because that's where the stamps would only apply to anyway. And we had this discussion when we were talking about the tax stamp legislation previously. So I do appreciate the feedback. Thank you,
Senator, if I may interject. We at the Non-Communicable Disease Consortium, the consortium was created because we have such a high rate of NCDs on Guam, and its mission was to lower those incidents and causes and find avenues to create a healthier island community. To delay the implementation of this, you're not saving lives that way, ultimately. Because as soon as we increase, past data has shown in 2010 when the tax was increased, the incidence of youth rates went down, the incidence of smokers went down, people trying to quit was increased. And to delay it by 1 year, you are really not helping us in our mission of saving lives in lowering those incidents of youth rates. And that applies both to alcohol. And our mission is to try to find ways to combat the tobacco and alcohol abuse on island, and this is one way, as I said. It's a comprehensive approach. So as far as the NCD consortium is concerned, we do not support any delay in fulfilling our mission, if I can say it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just curious that, as you see on the bill, it's talking about $9 million going to GMH, and I hear a lot about enforcement. But I don't see anything here that talks about revenue and tax doing that enforcement. So when one of you would like to say that, like Senator Nicholas says, we're doing the tax stamp, we do the enforcement, that we change, maybe amend the bill to identify a certain percentage to go to enforcement, because NCD, you're not going to get anywhere. I remember we talked about it, Kathy. You wanted to improve the healthy future, I guess, movement in the schools. We want to promote this more. If it all goes to GMH, and I'd love to see it all go to GMH, but if we expect to see something done in the market, we need, it can't just go to GMH. Not all of it. All right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, the four of you. Thank you, Dr. DeVito. All right, you're excused. Mr. Duenas, Ricardo Duenas, Frank Shimizu, Tom Shimizu, John Myers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Vice Speaker Talahi, and all the senators. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you and speak in regards to Bill 260. I have submitted written testimony in opposition to this bill. But first of all, let me start by saying my name is Ricardo C. Duenas. I am the Chief Financial Officer for Western Sales Trading Company and for ST Corporation. These companies have been in business in Guam for over 34 years. We are alcohol and tobacco distributors, and we employ over 100 employees within Guam. Our opposition to the raise in the alcohol and tobacco tax primarily, I think, goes along the same lines of the questioning of Senator San Nicolas and Senator San Augustine. I'm not here to argue the social impact of alcohol and tobacco. We believe that each individual has to make those decisions for themselves in regards to how they live their lives. And yes, there is a social cost to it. But in looking at the bill, we feel that there's a number of deficiencies in the bill in regards to enforcement. Bill 260 does not make any provisions for increased enforcement. We know that there's a large amount of what we call leakage of products coming out of the military bases. We see that every day as distributors. When we go out into the markets, we see products being sold in bars and being sold in stores that we know are not our product. We see them in the fiestas when we go to have a fiesta. We see cases and cases of beer that are being served that weren't purchased from us or any of our other distributors here in Guam. We know they are coming out of the military bases. None of those are being taxed. We have a large drain that's coming out of there. We also have a big problem with smuggling from foreign countries, as evidenced recently by the FBI investigation and conviction of some of our own customs officers who were aiding and abetting in this illegal black market. So we feel that before we have this knee-jerk reaction to raising taxes because it's a popular thing to do, that we should also take a strong, hard look at how we got to this point. Our laws for tobacco and alcohol enforcement are antiquated and inefficient. The resources we have at the Department of Revenue and Taxation are lacking. We don't have enough resources there to go out there and properly enforce the laws that we do have on the books. We need to strengthen those things. We need to strengthen it not over at revenue and taxation. We need to strengthen it at customs, at the borders for things coming in. We need to have an honest dialogue with our military leaders because they know that these problems exist and they turn a blind eye to it because it benefits them. We know that other bases in the United States have placed limits on the amount of alcohol and tobacco can be taken off the base. At the point we have now, you could buy a pallet of beer at the PX and take it out to your home for a fiesta. I've heard stories from Chamorros who have been stationed in other bases when they went and they bought a case of scotch, A day later, they had a knock on the door from the military police enforcing, you bought a case of scotch. Where's that case of scotch? What did you do with that case of scotch? Did you resell that case of scotch? We have nothing here, and we have no incentive from the military to help us, and we need to have that honest conversation with them. The tobacco stamp tax, when we discussed that and it was passed into law, it was with the goal of identifying what these black market products were, where they were coming from, and to try to quantify what the impact was to our government of Guam. And an estimate was made that it was up to $10 to $12 million a year in lost tax revenues. But for revenue and taxation to go out there and identify these products, there is no way for them to identify it because the packaging looks the same. With this stamp tax, we will have a mechanism, once implemented, for not just revenue and taxation, but also for any organization to go out there and say, these people are selling illegal products, they're selling it at a deep, deep discount, and they're not paying their rightful share of taxes to the government of Guam. Before we have this reaction, let's raise taxes, let's raise taxes. Let's look at the system, let's look at the problem. For the past month, the legislature and the administration has been going round and round on the fiscal problems the government of Guam is having. And a lot of senators have said, citizens of Guam don't want to fund a government that's already living beyond their needs, their means. We've had other senators saying, it's a simple solution, but the simplest solution isn't always the right solution. We need to take a look at the government system overall, because we know it's broken. You guys have been discussing this for the past month. The system is broken. We have taxes in place that are not adequately and efficiently being enforced and collected. So let's raise the taxes, but no mention of how are you going to fix that inefficient system. You're just throwing more money on top of more money on top of more money, and yes, it's going to hurt the economy. What's going to happen? It's going to drive more people to engage in black market activities. This goes all the way back to the years of Prohibition. People will want to drink. People will want to smoke. You can raise the prices, but all you're doing is driving more business to those military bases. All you are doing is providing more incentive for black market operators to bring illegal product in and screw the government out of their rightful tax. Before we get to that discussion of raising the taxes, let's look at the system. Healthy Futures Fund collected $25 million in the past fiscal year. Of that amount, less than $4 million went to the Guam Memorial Hospital. Part of it went to the nonprofit Cancer Institute that I believe that was out there doing education. But in recent articles in the government of Guam, from reviewing their performance, they haven't spent all the money they've been given. They haven't maximized all the money they've been given. When the Guam Memorial Hospital needs that money, if we're collecting $25 million now and we're only giving less than $4 million in Guam Memorial Hospital, who has been crying for years that they need adequate funding, that's unconscionable. So let's raise taxes and we'll give them some more. All you're doing is hurting the economy, you're hurting small businesses, you're hurting our tourism market. All these taxes that you guys have put in place, the increased GRT, the proposed sales tax, and now you want to increase alcohol and tobacco, increases the cost for tourists to come to Guam. They're attracted to come to Guam by our beaches, by our world-class shopping. Part of that experience is sitting on the beach and having a cold beer or a tropical drink. We raise those fees, we raise it, make it more expensive for them to go shopping, we make it more expensive for them to go out and eat and enjoy a beer, so that we get this reputation throughout Asia that Guam is a really expensive destination. And once you have that reputation, it's really hard to get rid of. And there are other markets in Bali, in Phuket, you know, all throughout Asia that have just as beautiful beaches and are much more affordable and are within 3 to 4 hours of here. So what we're going to do, we want to raise the taxes and we want to make it more expensive, not just for our citizens, but also more expensive for our visitors coming to Guam. In doing so, less visitors will come here. So we have less collections. It becomes a death spiral. So all I'm asking are the senators to take a step back and remember all those arguments you made several weeks ago when we talked about raising taxes shouldn't be the only answer. We have a broken government here. Okay, let's address those issues before we start piling more and more and more taxes on. Let's fix the system. There are mechanisms within our law to collect these fees, to collect these taxes, but because we don't have the resources to properly go out and enforce them, they get lost. And the answer, we feel, is not by raising any more taxes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Duenas. Mr. Shimizu, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a short PowerPoint presentation to make. And if there you go. Testimony today on a bill that's going to increase taxes of consumers of beer, wine, and liquor and tobacco. Next slide, please. So the excise taxes are as follows for Bill 260. Beer will increase from $1.68 a case to $2.40 a case, a 43% increase. Wine, the increase in wine is zero. Either it fell down somewhere in the cracks, it was intentionally not increased, who knows? All I know is that beer, malted beverages, is the beverage of choice for the lower income people. Wine, however, is normally the beverage of choice to relax, for dinner, or so forth, of the higher income people. We're wondering why.
I can correct that right now. The reason is if we went and did the research and our wine rate, the tax on the wine, is the highest in the nation currently.
I
so
disagree,
we decided,
but I'm not here to argue, but I disagree. Second, or the third one is spirits. Spirits will go from 42 some a case to 59 and some change a case, a 39% increase. And I'm only talking here about cases because when you're in the distribution system or industry, we primarily deal with cases. Tobacco, one case is taxed currently at $900, and this bill proposes to increase it to $1,200 a case, or 33% increase. Now, who pays for all this? Well, initially the wholesalers. But another question, who pays eventually? Not the wholesalers, not the retailers, the consumers. And third, and probably the most important issue here, is who benefits? The military. It's kind of surprising that the previous testifiers left out another alternate source for all of these products. That source does not pay any taxes, and they do not pay any freight. And they operate on a smaller margin. And they don't pay rent, they don't rent a warehouse, so they've got a terrific head start on the local wholesalers. In the past testimony that I made last January 29th, I offered 5 solutions. Now, I'm going to just preface that these solutions are not mine. I don't want to take credit for them. I've just compiled a list of these solutions and kept on adding on to it. So rather than for me to come here and preach the gospel of moderation, of cancer production, no, I want to preach solutions. And in addition to these 5, eventually I'm going to offer you guys 11, a total of 11. It's probably worth a little explanation of these 5 that were presented last January. Scanning capable registers. Make sure that new retail licenses that are applied for, make sure that they have scanning capable registers so we can keep track of their sales. None of this, open the cash register door, somebody comes in and buys 5 pounds of beef, ground beef, the transaction is done on an open cash register. What does that mean? There is no record of that transaction. 2, ensure that all imports are reported accurately. Man, I can tell you that, look at the 1 case of cigarette, $900 in excise taxes. Supposing somebody is importing a container load from Asia, from Korea, from the Philippines, even from down under, Australia, New Zealand, declares 10 cases of cigarettes, but inside the container is 100. You do the math. How many excise tax revenues lost? 3, Saipan does this again. May I remind you guys that Saipan has a revenue agent at the post office to make sure that their use tax, their gross receipts tax, and whatever taxes there are that Saipan has is properly collected. Now, this is only for surface shipment, but I can imagine air shipments from Amazon, for instance. Go ahead and station a revenue agent at the airport. There's nothing wrong with that. You do it, Saipan does it at the post office level, surface shipments. Do it at the airport. Number 4, military products at retailers. Enough said. I mean, listen, the Navy Exchange is the same as Target, Walmart, Price Costco, Cost You Less, J&J Payless. They're retailers. They're in there for profit. Therefore, they are sales-driven. They could care less about regulations. Regulations are a fleeting thing, you know. If it depends on who's the commander. If the commander likes the local retailers, they'll enforce. If the commander says, I'm only here for 2 years, the regulations become lax. Number 5, individuals and companies that do not file their 1040 or their corporate income taxes. Bingo, millions of dollars. So now, I presented those 5 last January 29. May I present a lot more? Number 6, somebody mentioned this previously. Let's move to the 21st century. Get rid of GRT and replace it with sales tax. It's a lot easier to administer. The consumer sees exactly what he or she is paying for, no more nor less. Number 7, and again, I cannot take credit for this. Mrs. Rita Frankis mentioned it last January. Ask the military to treat our brothers and sisters from Micronesia, the FSM, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Republic of Palau. Ask the military to treat them. That's Mrs. Frank's suggestion, and it's a good one, excellent one. How do we do this? Well, I would suggest we hold hands with Hawaii and we ask Uncle, the feds, please take care of the Micronesians at Naval Hospital. And if you're in Hawaii, please take care of the Micronesians at Tripler and the base dispensaries. And if you're the U.S. mainland, where Micronesians are, ask them and have them be treated at the VA hospitals. And Mrs. Frankis went on further to say, listen, when Uncle was negotiating these compact treaties, Guam and Hawaii were not invited to that table. It's strictly an agreement between the United States and our brothers and sisters from Micronesia. Sorry, Guam. Sorry, Hawaii. Why not get together with Hawaii? Your counterparts in Hawaii and say, listen, let's walk in together and go visit Uncle and ask them. Next slide, please. Number 8. All right, this is just a further expansion of Mrs. Frankis' idea. This is kind of like my idea. And that is, we ask Uncle, please, why not take out insurance for our Micronesian brothers and sisters who don't have insurance? They come to Guam, Hawaii, California. There are hundreds of federal insurance providers in the United States mainland. That would be one alternative. A second alternative, and a better one, I think the best one of all, is we ask Uncle, Uncle, we have 4 or more insurance providers here in Guam. Netcare, SelectCare, Staywell, TakeCare, and others. Make them bid for insurance coverage for our Micronesian brothers and sisters. That way, they go to GMH. They're given the medical services. GMH sends the bill to Netcare, SelectCare, Staywell, or TakeCare, and they get reimbursed, providing those invoices and statements are genuine. So what happens here? Last January, a couple of the doctors here mentioned GMH pays or is not paid for almost $30 million in billings from the uninsured. That's what it means, $30 million of extra revenue that GMH can get. This is according to the doctor that testified last January. Now, look at the bottom of that slide. We are, in effect, going to Uncle. Uncle is a lot older than even me. So we don't necessarily want to come into their house in a demanding, and posturing politically, in an arrogant way. No. We go there with respect, with inafamolik, and with diplomacy. I say, Uncle, please help us. Can you help insure or provide medical hospital service to our Micronesian brothers? And you notice on the bottom of the slide, those emojis, count the number of muzos, the frowns, and count the number of magov, the happy. The magov outnumbered the muzos. Next slide, please. More solutions. These are hospital-specific solutions. And where did I gather this? From the doctors who shall remain anonymous. But I can't think of this myself because I don't know. But doctors have come forward and said, you know what? GMH provides hospital services, and they do it pretty good now. GRMC provides not only hospital services, but specialty services. So, this one doctor said, my opinion, Frank, is avoid duplication of specialized, expensive equipment, avoid having two medical specialists, one at GMH, one at GRMC. You don't need two neurosurgeons. You don't need two doctors that can do liver transplant. You don't need two doctors that can do open heart surgery. Just one is enough for our island size. Give you a good example. Last week, a relative of ours had a stroke. She has the benefits, military benefit. So she's probably in her early 50s, had a stroke, went up to Naval Hospital. They stabilized her. And after she was monitored overnight, her condition became stable. They transferred her to GRMC. Why? Well, the Naval Hospital and GRMC are in a cooperative, combined effort. They don't have a cardiologist. So they transported Tina over to GRMC where they have a cardiologist. They have the equipment and the specialty equipment there. Beautiful. That's a great example of cooperation between military and civilian. Why not? Let's do the same thing. Let's try. It's not going to hurt. Number 10, outsource billing and collection functions. I'll give you an example. Earlier last year, my wife had to be treated under emergency conditions at John Muir Hospital in Walnut Creek. John Muir is a large hospital that services the Contra Costa counties: Walnut Creek, Concord, Pleasant Hills, Lafayette. It's pretty large. It's about almost 6 times larger than GMH. I received a billing from them, but it didn't come from John Muir Hospital. It came from CEP America, California, located in Modesto, 2 hours away. What I'm getting at, senators, is this. John Muir Hospital is large enough to have their own billing and collection department, but they chose not to. They chose to outsource it to CEP America in California. To me, this serves a couple of things. Number one, the hospital is there to provide services to the needy. They're in mourning, they're in pain. They don't want to be faced with collection and billing. Let somebody else do that. That's John Muir Hospital in Walnut Creek, California. $554 beds versus GMH about 100. So they're 5.5 times larger than GMH. They could have their own billing department, but they don't. Second example, 2 years ago I got treated for hernia at Straub. I received a billing for the hernia operation. It did not come from Straub. It came from Hawaii Pacific Resources, LLP. Third example, not going to mention names of patients, but this is a treatment by Dr. Berg here in Guam. It's for MRI services. The billing didn't come from Dr. Berg or his clinic. It came from Hawaii Pathologist Laboratory, LLP. Dr. Berg did not do the billing, did not do the invoicing. It came from Hawaii. So my question is this: why? Why would we have GMAs do the billing and the collection, and they can only, again, this is not my numbers, it came from the doctors, they can only do at a rate of 40 cents on the dollar. Wow. How can we survive? Number 11, QCs. Now, the guys at the visitor industry who are all my friends, they're going to get pissed off at me, but I'm going to mention it anyways. Again, I didn't create this solution. Somebody else did. And I'm just compiling them for your benefit, you guys. And I hope you take into consideration all of these 11 solutions. At the January 29th hearing, this was brought up. Next slide, please. So what happened is that a month ago, a bunch of guys from Guam went to the Big Island in Kona. And they received a billing. And if you look at the slide there, there's several items in that adds up to, now, this is an eye-opener. Next slide, please. What I've done is compile all of these costs, extra charges, fees, taxes, into one slide. The room rate was $1,195. It sleeps 4 adults. So 4 golfers, 4 visitors of the same sex and the same persuasion can go there, pay $11.95 for 5 days, and if you split that by 4, that's only $60 a day. Very, very attractive, very economical. $60 a day for staying on the Big Island resort area. Wow. But then, if you look at all the charges, one charge was $160, and that's 13+% sales tax. Another charge is a $177 cleaning fee. We never saw the cleaning lady, not one day in the 5 days, but we got charged for it. Another one was $50 for insurance, damage protection. I mean, every hotel, every vacation rental has their own damage protection insurance, but they decided to include this as one of their ways to get some more money from us. $47 processing fee, that's a commission for the folks that manage the resort. So there's your total. But if I add all of the total away from the room rates, it's $434. And that's equal to 36% of the room rate. Now, in Guam, what are we doing? We have an 11% TAF, Tourist Attraction Fund, and a 4% to pay for something, not GRT, but the 4% is to pay for some of the tax-related items. So Guam charges 15% of the room rate. The Big Island of Hawaii charges 36% of the room rate. Now, did we complain? We didn't. We weren't thinking. We didn't have time to go to the Hawaii Visitors Bureau and start complaining. We did not. We just paid the bill. We had fun. We had a good time and came back home to Guam. My point is this: QCs for the visitor industry has a beginning and an ending time. Why do we keep renewing the QCs? Why? If you don't renew it, guess what? The visitor industry will say, hey, we're going to have to raise the room rates. Yes, you do, because they're not going to absorb it. They're not going to eat it. They will raise the room rates. But who pays? Who pays? Certainly not us. It's the visitors that pay. And unlike some of the testifiers, I always like to put a source to all of the data that I present. And the source is on the lower right hand. Oops. lower right-hand corner. There you go. The management company of that resort area. Next slide, please. So I've presented 11 solutions for you guys to consider. So far, I'm a little bit disappointed because I didn't see anyone coming up to us and say, hey, I'm going to try to push 6 of your 11 solutions. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just, why don't we do the easiest thing we can do? Raise taxes. And if we can't raise taxes on the regular commodities, let's raise taxes on, the media likes to call it sin taxes. And I resemble that remark, because that means if drinking beer is a sin because it's taxed by a sin tax, holy smokes, I gotta go to the Archbishop and confess because I'm committing a sin every weekend. So those are the 11 solutions. Let me just review, if you give it a part, I promise you this is the next to the last slide. Let me just review a few comments from the January 29th public hearing. And I deleted all the names of the doctors and the professionals and the other lay people that testified. But the doctor said it costs GMH $30 million a year to treat the uninsured. No arguments here. But I just gave you some solutions that you can recoup this, all of it. GMH operates under crisis management, therefore you need to give us money. That's what the one doctor said. Another one is that we need to modernize. We need to have a dedicated funding source. No argument here. I'll skip that next one. Build a new hospital, one doctor said, because the lifespan of a hospital is only 10 or 11 years. 20 years at the max. Whoa. Straub in Honolulu was constructed or opened in 1952. That's 66 years ago. And if you go to Straub, the outside of the building is old. It looks old. No doubt about it. But if you go inside, it's spotless. It is spotless. And it's 66 years old. Then there's that pink building on top of the hill in Honolulu. It's called Tripler. Tripler existed before World War II. Therefore, it's over 80 years old and it's still ticking. It's not dead. And if you go inside Tripler, it's spotless, immaculate. Another physician said, the time to act is now. And I agree. Holy smokes. But I'm even go further than that. The time to have acted is 20 or 30 years ago, right? Before you were born. The hospital don't have consumables. They don't have drugs because GMH cannot pay its bills. I agree. And all of them, including myself and the others that testified, said, we need more money. We all agreed. One of them said, GMH is a financial black hole. Now, that's very damaging. I don't like that. And of course, I'll give credit to Mrs. Frankes. Please ask the military to treat the uninsured at their facility, the military facility. Next slide, please. So, my question is, why? Why consider something like this? Why raise taxes? Why? check those 11 solutions. Try it, you might like it. They're voter friendly, so if you adopt any of one of those 11 solutions, they're not going to lose you votes. They're going to win you votes. Another summary. The solutions I mentioned, 11 of them, they do not drive sales or revenue away from the island to the military. They don't. And best of all, the consumers, they are not affected at all. Zero impact on the consumers. Just follow those 11. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shimizu. Anyone wish to pose any questions to either one of the two? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Duenas. Mr. Shimizu, thank you very much. I have Mr. Fernandez, Mr. Mangiola, and Noel. Are you testifying? Mr. Rubio, come on up. Mr. Fernandez? Oh, Ms. Mangiola, Mr. Chairman, you're recognized.
Thank you, honorable senators. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you to provide testimony on Bill 260-34 and 261-34. We're here to provide testimony in support of 260-34 and 261-34 to increase the sin tax as well as the other real property improvements. We understand the measures intend to address long-term impacts of the general fund revenue losses resulting from federal tax cuts under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. If enacted into law, Bill 260-34 and 261-34 will supplement the revenue relief provided under Public Law 34-87 and Public Law Public Law 34-87 mandates a combination of budgetary cuts of $30 million, increases in the business privilege tax, and a new 2% sales tax beginning April 1st, 2018. GDO's pro rata share of that is about $30 million in cuts, amounted to about $12.3 million. The proposed tax increase to Bill 260-34 on certain alcoholic beverages and tobacco closes a funding gap in the 2018 for the Guam Memorial Hospital, and we hope will offset the general fund shortfalls for other agencies in the 2019. Meanwhile, the proposed tax increase on Bill 261-34 on property improvements would help support FY 2019 appropriations needed for education. The GEB supports both initiatives and believes aforementioned funding to the GDOE building maintenance fund is long time coming. It is imperative that we find a way to provide a steady stream of funds needed to address preventative maintenance, general maintenance, and deferred maintenance projects in at least 35 of the GDOE school campuses. As the honorable senators know, the Department of Education appreciates the bill that actually provides a funding source for some of the needed facility improvements and enhancement within our school system. Currently, we operate 41 schools. And so a lot of these schools have served. I do know that our education facilities chairperson, Mr. James Lujan, is meeting with the GDOE team. We have a priority listing of the types of the first schools that will get the needed support. We have a plan in place that we'll implement as soon as we get funding to meet those needs. So with that, I look forward to completing the 2019 budgetary process. The GEB will ask the governor and the Guam legislature to continue to work cooperatively to ensure adequate funding to preserve instruction and learning in our public school systems. And I just also want to mention, I always mention the 14 points of education. We have the author here, and this will go to helping us meet some of those mandates in the public law. So thank you for your support in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the committee. And obviously, you've heard the chair kind of give a high-level summary. I just wanted to touch base. The testimony that we're submitting actually applies to both Bills 260 and 261. So if we focus specifically on Bill 260, what we want, even though that doesn't go directly to a DOE in terms of revenues, what we did in terms of revenue going forward, what we did want to clarify was that currently under our appropriations, we do get a portion of Healthy Futures funds. So right now we did want to make sure we clarified that interscholastic sports, health and physical activities in our schools are funded at a level of approximately $891,700, well, exactly $891,754, and this funding has been relatively flat from this source of funding for about a decade. So we just ask that as you consider this bill and look at the funding, where the funding will go, that you consider ensuring that we sustain or at least our current level of appropriations for those purposes. So that was on Bill 260. Do you want me to address 261 or okay?
Mr. Rubio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hafaday, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important matter. My name is Noel Rubio, and I am a recent college graduate from the University of Chicago's Harris School of Public Policy, a rising professional in the regional public health and development sectors, Guam's emeritus member of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, and a strong advocate for context and culture-appropriate, equitable, sustainable, and smart policies that ensure our island and our people are healthier, safer, and readier to meet the dynamic and growing challenges of the 21st century. Our community now lies in the wake of a looming fiscal crisis that threatens the stability of our institutions, such as our only public hospital, the security of our general welfare, and the prosperity of our people. I'm not one to mince words. We're in for a wild ride, and we're in for the long haul. But we're also in it to win it. The Guamanian spirit is one of resilience and innovation, and we will get through this hurdle and be stronger for it, the same way we've stood up to every Goliath in our history and come away better as a result. By taking stock of what we have, what we need, and what we stand for, by implementing interventions within our means to arrive at feasible yet impactful solutions, and by pressing forward together. We face a difficult road ahead, one that will test who we are, what we're capable of, and the things that we care about. The way I see it, presently our only choice is to make hard choices. And that is why I firmly believe we should support Speaker Cruz's Bill 360-34, which raises local taxes on alcohol and tobacco and appropriates funds from the Healthy Futures Fund to cover Guam Memorial Hospital operating expenses for the 2018 fiscal year. I want to speak briefly about the body of evidence that demonstrates the efficacy of legislation like Bill 260, because effective policy is evidence-informed policy and data-driven policy. 2015 data from the Centers for Disease Control indicate that Guam has the highest smoking rate among adults, that being 29.2%, and youth, 20.2%, of all the US states and territories. The Department of Public Health's Office of Vital Statistics attributes or links 65% of all deaths on island to tobacco use and exposure, and that's from their 2014 report. Alcohol consumption and abuse statistics on Guam are catching up to national median rates, and there are marked disparities among genders, races, age brackets, and income levels, with higher risk factor prevalence observed in minority groups, and that is taken from the Guam State Epidemiological Profile 2012 and 2015 updates. Higher taxes on tobacco and alcohol represent a double win for governments: increases in tax revenue and decreases in risky behavior. In microeconomic theory, the levying of taxes to offset burdens imposed on a public as a result of individuals' unhealthy decisions is called the internalization of negative externalities. Not only do governments who implement a so-called sin tax enjoy a sustainable new source of income from higher per-unit prices of regulated commodities, they also prevent long-run costs associated with controlled substances by de-incentivizing incidence, prevalence, and subsequent exposure on the level of the individual. Moreover, research shows that retailers of tobacco and alcohol products are not affected by such interventions to the point of being driven out of business. In practice, and also in conjunction with other sound policies such as the Natasha Protection Act and Tobacco 21, because public health interventions don't exist in a vacuum, we know that these taxes work. The World Health Organization and other national health agency and other sources of data and technical expertise overwhelmingly recommend the passage of alcohol and tobacco taxes because of their demonstrated efficiency in raising public profits and generating healthy environments. In our neighbor country of the Philippines, revenue from 2013 tax increases on tobacco products are being used to fund impactful universal healthcare research and initiatives. And in a 2008 study conducted in Northern European countries, we see that there is an indication of cost-effectiveness ratios arising from the implementation of a comprehensive alcohol tax system. And that cost-effective ratio is said to be between $7,500 and $7,800 per quality-adjusted life year. And what that means, to kind of talk through the epidemiology speak, is that you don't just increase the amount of lives that you have because you're preventing the loss of life to unhealthy behaviors, but you also extend the lifespans of current lives, people who are living, because you're increasing the quality of their lives. So $7,500 to $7,800 per person per year that they extend their lives or that we keep them living. Finally, legislation like Bill 260 opens the door for valuable population health research, insights into elasticities or productive efficiency for alcohol and tobacco that assist in the assessment of tax efficacies, health alternatives, and other such interventions. These can all be used to improve current policies and programs and inspire creative, science-backed solutions and ideas about how to improve the quality of life for all of Guam's residents. Within every trial is the seed of opportunity. The days ahead won't be easy, but if we put the health and the safety of our people first, like Speaker Cruz does through his introduction and advocacy for Bill 260, we will secure that brighter future we envision for ourselves and for our succeeding generations, in spite of seemingly impossible odds. Let's keep fighting the good fight and fulfilling our ancestors' legacy of service and change, strategically, compassionately, resolutely. I appreciate everyone's time and attention and wish you all a pleasant day, my best regards, and the courage of your convictions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rubio. Does anybody have any questions? Comments? No? Thank you very much, all three of you. Dr. Cabrera? Patrick from Patrick Oliva from ST? No. Peter John? Benita Manglonia? Hannah? Hannah? Hannah Duenas? No. Ron Laguanya? What's this? Somebody from GRMC. Starts with a C. Oh, Jonathan. Jonathan? Okay. Dr. Cabrera.
Good afternoon, Speaker, honorable senators. My name is Felix Tadela Cabrera, and I am an internal medicine physician. I also am the Chief Medical Officer for Guam Regional Medical City as of about 3 months ago. I'm here today in support of Bill 260-34. The bill clearly spells out the desired financial outcomes, specifically for our sister hospital, GMH. You know, I come from the very strong opinion that we need both hospitals to coexist and in a symbiotic relationship. So it's very clear that GRMC cannot survive without GMH's support as well. So I strongly support their needs for their financial shortfalls. So given that this bill, we have the financial part, but then there's also a well-proven desired health outcome that I'd like to emphasize, and I think that's already been emphasized from the speakers before me. But I want to use two very strong examples and something that you can take home and hopefully digest this. Now, in 2009, the federal cigarette excise tax increased from 39 cents per pack up to $1.01 per pack. So in essence, it was an increase of about 42 cents per pack. Thank you. And this was in addition to state or territory taxes on tobacco products. So this was again 2009. In 2015, there was a study that published that looked at the effect of this 42-cent increase throughout the whole country, and what did that actually lead to? And it was published in an international journal called Addictive Behaviors. And so basically, they looked specifically at adolescents, so 12 to 17 years old, about middle school and high school, and young adults, 18 to 25. So they looked at them in two different groups. And ultimately, for young adults, the chance of smoking initiation decreased by 8%. And then for adolescents, they became 17% less likely to start smoking after tax increase. So what does that really mean? So essentially, you take 100 high schoolers, you charge 42 cents per pack extra, and then you just prevented 17 of those 100 from starting to smoke. Now, these taxes are not very effective on current smokers, and I think that's well understood in the adults, in the older adults. What's effective in them actually is restrictions based on in different environments, restrictions like no smoking at work and in public places, for example. Now, the key part is that the youngest citizens are the ones that are the most vulnerable and most sensitive to these type of tax increases. And so essentially, Bill 260-34 will increase the cost of a pack of cigarette by about $1, I believe. And so just think about that as opposed to the 42 cents. Now, switching gears, I want to talk a little bit about this one pretty remarkable phenomenon, statistical phenomenon that happened. So I was in Seattle, Washington. I lived there from 1998 to about 2008, and for both college and medical school. My first year of med school was 2004, and that was an interesting year because that was the first year, first of all, that women became the majority of all of us med students that was entering in for the first time, 51%. What was also very interesting about 2004 was for the state of Washington, that was the very first time that for decades, it had always been heart disease as the leading cause of death. But for the very first time in 2004, cancer became the leading cause of death, bumping heart disease down to number 2. And so why did this happen? So the theories were that basically what they were seeing was the significant drop-off in smoking rates starting from the late 90s in the state of Washington. And that was mainly due to restrictions on public spaces in terms of smoking, and then as well as the taxes. Now, it took some time to see this effect, but then that's what they're actually attributing, lower smoking rates with higher cause of cancer causing more deaths. So first of all, that question, that almost sounds counterintuitive, but the reality is that people who smoke, the chance, they're more likely to die of heart disease than actually cancer. My father, for example, was a heavy smoker, and he died at the age of 45 from a heart attack. Now, let's say he had stopped smoking, he probably would have lived longer, and then in the end, we all have to die of something, and so usually they live long enough to get cancer for some other reason, is the bottom line. Now, when we think about these two guarantees in life, basically, death and of course taxes, what we want to do is that we want to really understand, what we're actually doing here in terms of death rates, because in the end, it's about longer quality years that you have. So this is where both quality and quantity both take into effect. Now, So just to summarize, the statistical phenomenon would be smokers are now being able to live longer and likely more fulfilling years as compared to if they smoked. So because of this, I typically counsel my patients, I say, for my patients who smoke, I say, if you quit smoking today, you will cut your risk of having a cardiovascular event by 50%, 50. I say, there isn't a single pill I can prescribe that is as strong as you just quitting smoking. Nothing has 50% yield in terms of these medications. So because of that, I think that's a powerful understanding, and because of that, I'm very much in support of this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any after the panel speaks.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Appreciate that. Ms. Maglonia.
Thank you, Speaker. Buenos dias para todos manggagigwin na legislatura ng Guahan. Thank you for introducing Bill 260 to appropriate the sum of $9,273,146 from the Healthy Futures Fund for GMH's operation. GMH supports this legislation because not only does it provide the much needed resources, but most importantly, it helps to curb and discourage needless unhealthy habits that can and do result in costs to the hospital and to the taxpayers. It is difficult to quantify the costs related to tobacco and alcohol use because of the myriad of other illnesses that may result in a hospital admission. However, GMH was able to extract some aggregated patient data that show how many admissions involved in the diagnosis of some alcohol or tobacco-related illnesses. According to our admissions data, there have been over 2,000 alcohol and tobacco-related diagnoses from fiscal years 2016 and 17. This is just some of the data that we're able to pull out this morning, but I'm sure that once we go through the coding, this list could increase substantially. So I know that it's more than 2,000, but this is what we've been able to pull out this morning. This $9 million projected collection will certainly help GMH address this FY 2018 shortfall, and thank you for that. And one of the speakers mentioned about the outsourcing of billings and collection. It is difficult to find local vendors for that, and the hospital has tried to do that in the past. The hospital billing is very complicated, and it's not easy. And we are a TEFRA hospital, which a lot of the companies in the states that are doing billings for hospitals are not TEFRA hospitals. They are on the prospective payment system. So we're a little different. So when they make the comments that we're only collecting 40 cents on the dollar, that is because of how GMH is being reimbursed by about 60% of our payer mix because of the TEFRA rate that we're being reimbursed. But I hope that with this dedicated funding to GMH, that will be that the legislature has passed that sales tax. It would help GMH in building this outpatient services so that we can be more efficient in providing the care to the patient, so that we can at least, for the Medicare, Medicaid, and MIP patients, we can get them out within that 2 midnight rule, so we can maximize our reimbursement from being per diem to about to a percentage rate reimbursement. So I want to thank you for this, and we hope to see the implementation of this measure immediately so that GMH can start receiving some of these tax increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LaGuardia.
Hafere. Si Ronald lagwanya zo. Dankjewel na si Zus Masi no na yun estine oportunidad. Bij tutun na husupoti estina lai prinuponi 26034. Mina husupoti esti sa pudimatay si tatao ni Chipa Jani Gimen. Mas di 20 años tatina tempo. Sinanao, matay 11 años tatina tempo, kanset talo. Si etse luhu, matay ni Chipa talo. Manasua, la mitad ni gofesnya, matay 2 años tatina tempo. Si Vincent se luhu, matay talo, 11 años na tempo. Ni higadu, igimin pumuno gi mas, lo tsekpa talo. Guau loki, tsekpa tu mas di 30 años lo pumarau. Hutulaika I ofisyoku, do tarabira para minaulik. Ukeke epok pagu I dos leyu, si Van dan si Vince, ni manticipa zaman gigimin. Gigimin no loki lo sto laika jo. Wana dosa na si besa gian sabalu o domingo. Lo mina husangan esti sa uaatan gimalofan tempo ilinala mantau-tauta. Manlalala gini ni natura na banda itano janitasi. Nisisita taatan todo di pagu gini linalata. Pagu gumagaluzo jampo mepeskazo gitasi. Bumaluntatoryo ki esti Cancer Action Network tana uusap put parabe fanajuda sa hulili ibaba jamungahit kwatu ginabanda. Minausangan talos ti sa mafanyago zo gini, estigui na pa be matay, zaho de sesya loki na GMH loki para sa gaho. Zaniyo tumoko, Your Lady of Peace, anay manggagi na mahafid di mananaho, zangi zapigo na mahafid dos seluho. Hafid tanananga, patananga esta kiman salahit esta, nisisita tatsonik esti kosaki, Imam famagoonta ufan munga matutun. Kumuna guagwan lekuna umahasu sa umbisuno makat pagu itempo. Sa sonozo loki gi NCD, Non-Communicable Disease Consortium, sono gi Action Team, gi Nutrition Team, Community Gardens. Sa ulili hafasya na concept maninana si tau-tauta. Tanto gi ineng kano gi gelay ni mamapapaki todo ni bineno. Nisisita, tas PF Tembano, na mungahit sumogi sa tanay ifamagonta edzo na oportunidad na munga loki umatsogi. Pues, edza pabesangan, bebe na Canada, ti bebe na Apmam, napataatan, todo di gini patafanatan may sahit. Sa hunggan kada na ilinala, lo sinya tanamaok. Zangin ta utut pago, tas piaf taymano pata mungahin ni famagonta. Piori man dikiki famagonta ni mamamayla. Kumun nagwagan, sa zawa maman, si besa lo ti pabegimin tangki, tagi antis. Huliligi hujungi publiko. Bulan nero siya hujung mamafafana isi besa zaman gigimin gi hujungi kontunsalan. Ja hulili hafasya na bida at sotsogi kontra. Hita ni taja beda data. Bana mamalofana gitsalan. Pes pumara pesun li ijo na tauto adudulak ko gatu. Put paro emokapo. Ekwafa, lamiga experience shakku, ni man auto sanizung, ni man bolotsu, pes mas makeke tuut tauto sa puri bolotsu niya. Pes edzigizu kalan pwede anay kumun na lagbagan, sa na lamaput, pwede o fa magmata, za umunga za panaparan na yun. Edza, pabesangan, za pabemente atalo na unggan este na judo, para iman tau-tauta, para i-ispitata, para minolekta. Jesus Masi.
Jesus Masi, Senor Laguatnia. Anybody have any comments or questions? If not, thank you very much, Doctor. Mr. Guatnia, Ms. Manglonia. Next, I have. Can you help me read? Jonathan. Oh, we did that. Yeah. Jonathan, Catherine Castro, Levin, is there Leon Guerrero? Well, nobody's moving. Whoever wants to testify in 260, come forward. And just introduce yourself. Thank you. Just turn the mic on. The red light, just push it and the light goes on. There you go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Senators. I just got on island. I don't have any figures in front of me. I don't have any stage statement to say. I'm a small business owner, and I do sell. I'm in the restaurant and bar industry. I do sell cigarettes at my establishment. I'm here just to let you know that, to give you the business owner's perspective of what this bill will do. Number one is, as of today, and I was just aware of the bill here Thursday when I arrived back on island to attend business. I was abreast of the bill. Thank you. And I made the decision not to sell cigarettes. Not only one, they're expensive, but I don't sell a lot of them. I think what this bill is going to do for small business owners is a lot of them will stop selling cigarettes. That doesn't mean people are going to stop buying cigarettes at other retail stores or other restaurants or other places they can get them, but it's going to drive the endorsements that we pay on our liquor tax or our liquor endorsement. There's a fee, and I don't know what that fee is off the top of my head, a couple $100. It's not much, but what it's going to do is it's going to drive people not to renew that endorsement. So there's loss of revenue there. People are going to smoke and people are going to drink regardless of what you do. Raising taxes is just going to burden the business owner. It's going to burden me. My business already is down close to 30% this last year. And talking to other business owners in the same industry, they are as well too. A lot of other owners are thinking of closing down and just doing something else or leaving Guam. And it's not because of the taxes, it's just the economic outlook in Guam for our industry is, the Chamber of Commerce put out a memo that I briefly read not too long ago, that the outlook for small business owners in the restaurant, bar industry, nightclub industry, entertainment industry does not look good. It's bleak, I think the term was in the article. And that was put out by the Chamber of Commerce. You know, I'm just here to say that I think there's other ways to raise money besides attack the small business owner. People will find a way to drink, just like it was said earlier in the PowerPoint. What's going to happen is you're going to end up driving people to the black market. You know, I'm out and about quite a bit. I see liquor that's bought on base. I see beer that's bought on base without taxes in every single bar on this island. You know, it takes revenue. It's not taxable. You know, I don't know what they're doing with the revenue they're making off of the inventory that they're selling, but it's not a positive thing. You know, enforcement here on the island is a big issue. I own several businesses back in the States. I'm developing my own line of liquor. So I know the industry. I don't know the government of Guam and how things actually operate here. You know, it's not my forte. I'm a restaurateur. So I'm just saying that if we were to tax that bill, not only is business down in the industry right now, and the Hotel Restaurant Association could put out numbers that I don't have. I didn't have time to prepare. But I guarantee all the numbers are down from the last year, and then taxing it even more is going to make it worse. And it's to the point where, you know, I have to downsize because of extra taxes. You know, there's only so much money people will pay for a burger. People aren't going to pay $20, $25 for a hamburger. It's not going to happen. You know, people aren't going to pay 10 bucks for a beer. It's not going to happen. What it'll do, it'll drive the black market, and it'll drive the small business owner like myself out of business. I'll pick up, close down, and I'll move somewhere else. I mean, you know, Guam has been very good to me. Guam is very business friendly. It always has been. When they passed the smoking ban, Senator Cruz asked we briefly had a discussion of the impact of that. I don't know if you remember that, but he called me in and he wanted my opinion, and we talked about the non-smoking in public areas, restaurants, bars, grocery stores and whatnot, and I was all for that. Even though I still sell cigarettes, but I make them go outside and smoke. You know, it's a way for me to make some money, but now it's to the point where, you know, business is not looking good out here on Guam, for me at least. And I've had and Guam has been good to me. The taxation, just everything here has been great. It's very business friendly. I think this is going to be a downturn for the community, especially the small business owner that owns restaurants and bars. I mean, we all go out and eat, we all eat and we all drink. It's a choice we make. If you smoke, it's a choice you personally make. Nobody's holding a gun to your head making you need to smoke or you need to quit smoke. It's a personal choice. So, you know, like a lot of the other testimonies from other groups and communities, they're going, well, you know, I quit and smoking is bad. And, well, yes, it is bad. And yes, drinking is bad to a certain extent. I mean, but it's a choice that you have to make on a personal level. You know, nobody's going to make you stop. It has to be up to you. You know, the whole thing is Big Brother. I think there's just too much everybody trying to control what everybody's doing. There's other ways to raise taxes. You know, a fee for the tourists coming in. You know, Palau has a $100 fee. When you fly out of Palau, they charge you $100. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's $100. The tourism here, if we were to charge and raise that tax of people coming in and leaving, would offset some of the balance of the deficit versus the retailers and the small business owners. I mean, it's going to be a huge impact. You know, I'm in the industry. I'm the only one here in my industry. I heard about it and I felt the need to express myself. You guys are going to make the decision that you want to make. You know, the people are going to speak and it is what it is, but I just wanted to give you my perspective on it. You know, the industry is tough enough as it is. Regulation is a big problem on this island. At any one of my restaurants in the States, in any state that I own, the compliance checks are regular. You don't know when they're coming. Sometimes it's twice a week, sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's 3 times a week. You never know. The regulation for over-service, buying products from other than the acquired retailer, you know, like buying at the military base, you know, that is highly illegal everywhere in the world. You're not supposed to do that. So, and like I say, I've been in every single place out here and I see products that I would love to have on my shelf for my customers, but I don't do it because it's illegal and I'd have to go to the base and buy it. So I just stick with what I can get from the local retailers. And that in turn builds a great relationship between me and the local retailers like Ambrose, ST, Midpack, you know, all these people that are going to be impacted by this. So I just, you know, I wish everybody would just think about where else you can get the money. There's a lot of other places to get money at. There's a lot of ways to cut the budget in, you know, just the budget itself to generate more money. So you don't spend as much, there's more money for the hospital, there's more money for some of these other programs. But as a small business owner, it's like putting another nail in a coffin in an already bleak business right now. I am down 30%. Those are hard numbers. So now, if the bill does pass, prices go up, I have to raise my prices, I will downsize, and when I downsize, that means I will eliminate probably half my staff, my employees. They're gonna have to find jobs somewhere else. And it's gonna be a domino effect. Now they can't afford their rent, they can't afford to go out themselves and do other things. I mean, this is a very, there's gotta be other ways to look for money besides, punish the sin tax. It's not us people, it's the business we chose to be in, and then now we're being punished for it because it's sinful. To have a beer, or to have a drink or a glass of wine is sinful. To smoke a cigarette is sinful. It's never been sinful, it's a choice that people make. Simple as that. Anyways, I just wanted to say my piece and let everybody know exactly how the industry is and where the industry's going. The industry's not looking good this year. And I'm looking to make some changes, and I'd love to stay here on Guam, and I'd love to stay in business here and still thrive, but it's getting harder and harder. I have no problem raising the GRT. That's not an issue. I believe in getting rid of the GRT and going with a flat tax rate, period. In Seattle, where my company is home-based, it's 9.5%. California, it's a little over 10%. Closer to 11% on some of the things. Do I bat an eye? No, I pay it because I have to. It's simple as that. If you just do away with the GRT and raise a flat tax rate across the board, you go in to buy clothing, you tax the tourists, you go in to buy everything but edibles, you go in to buy anything, your hotel taxes go up. There's other ways to do it besides raise taxes on this industry, the sin industry, which everybody calls it. People are going to drink, people are going to do what they want to do regardless of how much you raise the taxes. You're just going to force it into the dark ages again. It's going to be forced. Everybody's going to buy more of their products from the base without the taxes. It's going to happen. And I hate to say it, but I'm in the industry. I've been in the industry for 35 years. I've seen a lot of changes. I've been in a lot of states. I've had a lot of businesses. And I don't think this is the right way to go. And that's my personal opinion. So as far as the business owner's perspective, I just want to give you that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of other small business owners would agree right along with me. For whatever reason, they're not here. It's going to impact their lifestyle. It's going to impact their business. I don't know why there's not 100 of them here, giving their opinion and voicing themselves to you guys. So anyways, that said, thank you for the time speaking.
Thank you very much. Can you just spell your last name?
It's Looby, L-O-O-B-Y.
And your first name's Mike, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Wait, there's a question here.
Thank you. Could you just maybe explain a little more about the military liquor sold in every bar?
Well, that was...
How do you know that?
Because I like to keep I like to keep close to the ground. I like to see what everybody's doing. I go travel around. I like to see what the competition's doing, what new things they're doing. It's only smart in this industry to know what your competition's doing. And quite frankly, there hasn't been a lot of competition for me, but I still like to see what other people are doing. And I walk in, and I will walk up to the bar, order a drink, and I see alcohol on the shelves and beer on the shelves that I cannot buy through my retailers on Guam. Every single bar.
Is it the brand or the packaging, or how do you recognize it?
Well, there's Tawaka being served in bars here. It's a Greek liqueur. You can't get it.
Okay.
There's not a retailer on this island that carries it. The only place you can get it is the package store at the base. It's that simple.
All right. What about beer that you do sell? Can you tell whether it's come from the...
I can look at any product and I'll know what it is. You can have it in your hand covering it and I'll know what it is. I pride myself on knowing my industry. And I'm good at what I do. So you could be 100 feet away and I could tell what you're drinking. As long as it's in a can or a container or a bottle, I could tell you what it is. I mean, it is that. But, it all goes back to enforcement. Nobody's enforcing it here. The Liquor Control Board is not enforcing anything.
Well, that's why I'm asking. I want to know how enforceable is that on our end, on the government.
It's very enforceable. It's compliance.
Yeah.
Liquor Control Board comes out and does their compliance checks, and if you're in, they cite you. Just like they do anywhere in the States, they cite you. Third citation, they take your license away. You know, they suspend it for 10 days, and on your third one, your second one, and the third one, they take your license away. And then you are not allowed to have a license, period. So, you know, these are things that need to be enforced. And I can't even tell you, I even see it now. I've been on the island for 4 days. I went to another place for dinner. I saw something, and I'm just going, you know, I just can't believe it's happening. Well, I can believe it's happening because of the taxes. And in lieu of raising the taxes on liquor and alcohol and tobacco, quite frankly, tobacco I don't care about, but alcohol and beer and wine, and that's the mainstay. Back in the States, there's a rage and a ramping up of micro beers. People are drinking. People are out drinking. They're having 2, 3 beers. Instead of 5 or 6, they're having 2 or 3. But now the product, it's a micro beer. It's more expensive. So instead of having, 7 or 8 Bud Lights, they'll have 2 or 3 of the micro beers, which are higher in alcohol content, and they're more expensive. So people are, they're regulating themselves on what they're going to spend. People, when they go out, we all go out. When you go out, you know, well, God, my rent's due tomorrow. I've only got $20 to spend, but we're going to go out and spend the $20. And that's all you're going to spend. You know, if you're smart. If you're not, you don't want to put yourself in debt or use credit cards and all that thing. But what's going to happen is you know what you're going to spend when you go out. So if you raise the price, you go out and have 1 beer because that's what you can afford versus 2 or 3, and then my prices are higher, so it forces you to only have 1 versus 2. You know, my profits are down, my sales are down. You know, I have to cut back on my employees. I have to cut back on my inventory. I cut back on everything. It's survival. You know, and there's so many things in this industry that can take your business out. Not only just liquor and smoking and taxes, there's so many other things that can ruin your business in this industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, how often annually is your business establishment visited by a compliance officer?
Okay, I can lie.
No, tell the truth, please.
I haven't. It's been probably 2 years since I've seen a liquor control agent in my establishment.
2 years?
But of course, they understand, they know that I know the rules, they understand I follow the rules, but still, that's no excuse. You know, and there's blatant things going on the island that one thing is you are not to give alcohol away. And there are actually places on this island that are giving alcohol away if you're a woman on a certain night, you know, free. And it actually states in the liquor laws that you have to sell it for at least acquisition price. Right. And there's places giving it away. How do I compete with that? And then the taxes go up. I can't compete with that. I mean, it's just, it's an industry that I think needs to have more regulation, period, at least on Guam. Back in the States, everybody follows the rules. Everybody does the right thing because the compliance checks are there. You never know when it's going to happen. Well, when it happens, and if it happens, they do not hesitate to cite you. First one is a fine. Second one is a fine plus a 5 or 10 day shutdown period. And your third one is they take your license. It's that simple.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, Ms. Martinez, I understand you wish to testify now.
Good afternoon. My name is John Martinez, and I'm a private citizen. This is a very unprepared statement that I'd like to make, and of course, I don't have anything in front of me. But anyway, I'm in neither support or not with regards to I'm just here in general. Whereas I'm looking at it now, we're reaching out and making all these desperate attempts here right now, from tax increases, crashing the government, reducing this, expenditures and everything else, the hospital. And we just need to, I think this is an opportune time for this body here right now to make a grand effort here right now to actually, again, consider the underlying problem here. And again, this Mr. Speaker, we've discussed this many times before. Again, we're right back into the compact situation on the COFA issue. And again, if you look at our situation right now, you know, with I'll give you one good example. Our tourism industry, taxable income right now, we're patting ourselves in the back because, you know, we have a taxable income of $152 million per annum. That's terrific. But then again, out of that, $147 million of that is used to fund these, you know, to fund the migrants. I think at this time now there should be a concerted effort between this body, the administration, and so forth. And I think it's time. You know, we're always looking for money, and what we're doing here right now is we're really just nitpicking on little stuff, like shutting this down. And we're still not ever going to have enough. If you look at our situation here right now, I don't have the numbers here, but if you look at the overall general condition of the government and this, and our economic setup here, is that we seem to always have an unaccountable 35% unaccountable with regards to incomes generated, you know, our growth, our GNP, and so forth, and everything else. Where is this? You know, we just can't seem to. Our problem here is that, and then we blame the QC for. If you look at the amount of money that's borrowed and what's owed to us, okay, by law, by the federal government, you know, from the Compact Impact Treaty, we have the amount borrowed is something like over 90% of the amount borrowed for taxes and everything else to support this government is around 90-something%. So anyway, I think the underlying problem with this here right now is, again, we have to look at the compact issue and the unfunded. I think now the federal government has to come up and step up. And you know, we seem to be very quiet about this. You know, our hospital, our prison, and everything else. I mean, you know, by law, this is a law, and I think it's time that this body, I think, move into the writ of mandamus, and I think that's the only way to do this. And this is to force the federal government to pay what they're supposed to pay. And that is what this whole Compact Impact is. And right from the beginning, they are supposed to cover the cost of these migrants in exchange for defense and so forth, and to create the air, land, and sea control of the Micronesian, and that's what this whole thing is all about. We're going to do this now, and if you look at the numbers that we're trying to do here, you're going to crash the government. And here's another thing too, you know, I mean, it's not of anything, but, you know, I don't like to say this, but the, you know, in taking down payroll and reducing hours and everything else, if you look at the, you know, the biggest customer of the private sector is really the government employees. And that's what we look at, you know. If you look at, I was arguing with, I was in front of a businessman a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about government spending this and so forth, the excessive amount of this, and so, but then again in the back I see his calendar, and there's two X's marked on the calendar, and what that is that's the government of Guam paydays. The thing that kind of prompted me to come over here was that just watching an insert, YouTube, you know, where they were talking, Hawaii was talking about the Compact Impact, and a comment that was made there, and he said, you know, and in Hawaii, from what I understand, you know, they've always tried to maintain that the migrants are, you know, are to be maintained at less than 1%. And they've kept that. You know, here in Guam, you know, our migrant situation here is nearly 15% of our population. And again, if you look at that, out of that 15%, from what I understand, 72%, you know, are dependent on, you know, on public welfare. You know, this anyway. Hawaii goes on to say that we have we have to start moving in on this, and we have to make the exerted effort here right now, you know, to be reimbursed for these expenses as it should be. Do you want to be like Guam and let it go, like, and be in the situation like Guam is at right now, where it's completely almost out of control? And is it? Maybe it is out of control. I don't know. But if we're talking, you know, if you look at this, and if we just, you know, there's a bill sitting in Congress right now, from what I understand.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martinez. Yes, we've discussed it, and if you looked on YouTube, that even Hawaii with 2 senators has not been able to get proper reimbursement. We get more per year than they do. So we'll deal with that in a completely different situation. That's not what we're about here today, all right? So
well,
thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else on 260? Otherwise, we'll move to 261. Can I have the... Ken Leon Guerrero. Mr. Bradley. Senator Klitsky. Doris Flores Brooks and we have a tradition where the senator starts first. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to perhaps take a novel approach this afternoon and talk about Bill 261.
Whatever you want to testify on, we'll include it in the record.
Thank you very much. Honorable Speaker B.J. Cruz and honorable members of the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication, given the flexible approach to germaneness, my approval or opposition to Bill 261-34 is withheld. Starting out by saying, read my lips, no new taxes. Probably going to keep me from being reelected as President of the United States, but I said it anyhow. Vice President Bush's speech foreshadowed public sentiment when Governor Calvo mounted multiple assaults in apparent disregard of Public Law 24-222 on the 4% rate of business privilege tax. Public Law 24-222 reenacted provisions that would serve as a popular buffer to temper impulsive or improvident tax increases. Assuming arguendo the correctness of several opinions of the Attorney General, I offer amendments to statute and your standing rules that preserve that buffer that will pass Organic Act muster. Set out below are proposed amendments to 3 GCA Section 16311, 2 GCA Section 2108A, and Section 601A of your standing rules. If adopted, these provisions would, in accordance with 48 U.S.C. Section 1423B of the Organic Act, which reads, "The legislature shall be the judge of the selection and qualifications of its own members. It shall choose from its numbers its own officers, determine its rules and procedure." Well, in accordance with that section, we could convert a scheme that makes approval of tax increases by referendum mandatory into an advisory referendum. Holding the advisory referendum at a general election would be a condition precedent to a tax increase. The voters go to the polls and give the tax increase an advisory thumbs up or thumbs down. No matter the results of the referendum, the tax increase would not be effective until 90 days after the date of the general election. During that 90-day period, or 90-day interval, the legislature that passed the tax increase would be able to repeal it in the face of a decisive negative vote in the referendum. If the outgoing legislature did not repeal the tax, the incoming legislature could take a crack at it, as the tax would not be effective until February. During the 90-day interval between passage of the tax increase and its effective date, two legislatures would have the opportunity to consider the wisdom or lack thereof of the tax increases. No doubt, during that 90-day interval, a public-spirited senator, it's almost redundant, isn't it? A public-spirited senator or two would introduce a bill to repeal the tax increase, giving the public, as you were giving the tax-paying public another opportunity to oppose or support. A legislature's attempt to protect us from itself and its successors, like Public Law 24-222, is not possible. The best we can do is add an element of popular sovereignty to the process by using an advisory referendum as a condition precedent to a tax increase. A flexible approach to germaneness, which Bill 261 is, would allow the addition to this bill of a similar approach to 3 GCA 16-312, which deals with bonds and fees. Moving into a different area of the bill, notwithstanding my opening line, I'll bite my tongue for Section 1 and following. A moderate increase in real property taxes to fund school maintenance is a good idea whose time has come. So I'll bite my tongue and forswear any lip reading required for this increase. I've got a dental appointment this afternoon. Section 2, but Section 2 needs attention. The language set out in the bill is for the sole purpose of maintaining GDOE school facilities. That's what the tax is devoted to. And I would change that by adding, or by reworking it, so that that which is implicit in law becomes expressed by adding, quote, in compliance with 1 GCA section 715, 1, 6, 7, 8, and 12. So that the phrase reads, for the sole purpose of maintaining GDOE school facilities in compliance with 1 GCA 715, 1, 6, 7, 8, and 12. For the uninitiated, those are 5 points in the Every Child is Entitled to an Adequate Public Education Act. Things like water, electricity, air conditioning, safe and sanitary, etc. Now, I suppose it would be possible to say, well, we really don't need to go into that detail, but I would challenge anyone who happens to be watching today to tell me if you've ever been in a school where your own, teachers especially, if you've ever been in a school where your classroom was hotter than the hinges of hell, and the only way you could get any relief at all was to go into the principal's office, let me know. Because if those sections were added, it would stand as a prohibition against air conditioning offices at the expense of classrooms, Mr. Speaker. And I just tossed in something here with respect to draftsmanship. When Section 3 of the bill sets out 5 GCA Section 22425(1) and ends it at a colon, does that mean that the following laundry list is repealed? I don't know, and I didn't have time to pull Sutherland on statutory construction to determine whether or not it does. And I didn't even have time enough to go through the list to see if the potential repeal would be something I would favor. So I'll just leave that matter as it is. And then the rest of the bill here is my feeble attempt at legislative drafting. If those sections met with favor by this honorable committee, they could be inserted into Bill 261, and I think it would be meritorious legislation, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Klitsky. Mr. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here to testify on behalf of the Guam Bankers Association this afternoon with regard to Bill 261-34. If I may, I'll read the letter from the association members. Dear Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity that you have accorded to the Guam Bankers Association to submit our views on Bill number 261-34. As we mentioned in conjunction with our testimony on earlier legislation, Bill number 230-34, we are in favor of an increase in the tax rate charged on holdings of real property in Guam. As you are undoubtedly aware, property tax rates here are among the lowest, if not the lowest, of any jurisdiction within the United States. Further, in most jurisdictions, the property tax is devoted to funding the public school system, and we are pleased to note that Bill number 261-34 will continue to direct Guam's property tax revenues to the Territorial Education Facilities Fund. Again, thank you for the opportunity to express our support for the increase in Guam's real property tax rate as proposed by Bill number 261-34. With our regards, John Wade, CEO, ANZ Bank, Bill Leon Guerrero, Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, Bank of Guam, Mark Taquito, actually it's signed for Mark Taquito, who's Senior Vice President, Bank of Hawaii, Philip Flores, President and CEO, Bank Pacific, and Edward Antalan, Senior Vice President and Regional Manager, First Hawaiian Bank.
Thank you very much. I think some of them are asking for a copy. Oh, you have? Okay. All right. Any questions of these two? Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you, Ms. Bradley. I'm sorry we made you sit there for 2 hours. All right. With that, we will consider Bill 260 and 261 as having been heard. And for the viewing audience, the committee will leave the record open for an additional 10 working days. Please submit your testimony to senator@senatorbjcruz.com, or you can bring it down, a hard copy, to the office here at the Guam Congress Building. So we'll leave the record open for an additional 10 days for anyone who wishes to submit additional testimony on either one of the two bills. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you.